is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, and we have a special program today. We are here just after the birthday of Lyle Alzado. That's right, April 3rd would have been Lyle Alzado's 71st birthday. Man, time flies, having watched him when I was younger and growing up and all of that stuff. To think that if Lyle was still around, he would be 71 is pretty crazy. But when we wanted to celebrate this and talk a little about him so we could remember this Raider great, he is a fan favorite. And so we wanted to do that with our good friend Jim Duffner. Jim wrote the book on Lyle Alzado, the Lyle Alzado story, Nobody's Invincible, which you can purchase right now. It's linked below in this podcast, on the video as well on YouTube. Go right to Amazon.com, pick it up, 5-star rated book. It is a fantastic read. We had Jim on the show on CBS Sports Radio last summer when it was released, and it really is one of those books where you pick it up and you don't put it down till you're finished. And if you're a Raiders fan, you have to add it to your collection, so make sure you do that. But we bring Jim in now, and Jim, can you imagine Lyle being 71 years old?
It's hard to imagine because it really is. I've thought about it, and it's just, I can't. He'd be getting into something, though.
He would be. I would imagine that his 71st birthday party would be a rip-roaring time. But let's backtrack for those people who maybe didn't hear you when you were on the CBS show with us that first time, and talk about how you and Lyle kind of connected and why it was that you found kinship with one another, and how you basically became brothers from another mother, and that background that made you become such close friends.
Well, we grew up with a lot in common. I mean, he grew up fighting in the mean streets of New York, and I grew up fighting down at the beach. Me to fit in, him to survive, basically. And we just, I was raised by my grandparents, and we just had a lot in common.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting too, is because I think we tend to, people who have similar backgrounds to us, you can understand each other clearly off the bat. But tell us the first time, where did you meet Lyle, and how did that all go, and how did you kind of start to talk about your background so that you realized you had so much in common?
Well, I met him at NFL events, and we became close friends, or we really bonded when he saved my life in a bar fight up here in Las Vegas. Actually, it was outside of the bar in the parking lot. But I had a couple guys that I'd grown up with in San Diego, and they asked for a ride back to the hotel. I'd just run into them, and I said, sure, after a couple drinks, I'll give you a ride back. Anyway, they ended up locking me out of my car, and I had 4 guys coming at me with knives and clubs, and I thought I was going to the hospital. I thought it was a sure bet, and Lyle just popped up out of nowhere, and they ended up taking the trip to the hospital. And it just it was like an immediate bond between Lyle and I.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, saving your life is a nice way, immediately you kind of like somebody if they're going to do that for you.
Yeah, and he just popped up out of nowhere. I had no idea he was up here in Vegas, and it just, I don't know. We were like kindred souls.
Yeah, meant to be, obviously. And Jim, when you look at Lyle's life, I think when people, and we hear from fans all the time when we talk about him, and you get a mixed reaction because you have Lyle, who the football player, who was incredibly talented, a guy that very easily could be in the Hall of Fame and maybe should be in the Hall of Fame, if not perhaps for his late life admission to doing performance-enhancing drugs, including steroids and other things. But you have this kind of this image of Lyle, who he was on the football field, and he was a mean SOB on the football field, and he was a great player too. He had that intensity that made him fit in so well with the Raiders. But there's that duality that we've talked about in the past, right? That duality of the guy and the football player. When you look at Lyle, the football player, very simple, straightforward. He wanted to kill you. He wanted to win the battle. And then the guy off the field, where was the connection there? Why was Lyle so driven on the field? What was it off the field that made him so driven?
Well, it was his background, the way he grew up in the streets, having to fight for everything that he got. And the fear of having to go back to the streets drove him. He never wanted to go back, and he never wanted to be the poor, broke kid that didn't have anything, and he was one of a kind. I mean, the guy was bigger than life, and he would give you his shirt off his back, but he had that fear in him his whole life that he was going to fail, and he did not want to fail, and he did everything in his power to keep from failing.
Yeah, clearly driven. And I mean, his career from Denver to Cleveland, of course, to the Raiders. And when he got to the Raiders, he just fits in so well. I mean, I think when you think of that Raider mystique, you had those guys in the 70s, including Matuzak and Villapiano and all those guys that and Ted Hendricks, those guys that created that mean guy attitude, that kind of swagger that the Raiders had. And Lyle fit in well with that. When he finally got through and was done in Cleveland and goes to Oakland, talk about that. Did he feel immediately like he had found his true home?
He felt at home. He was Al Davis's and Tom Flores' favorite all-time player, and he felt at home. This is his family. It's his extended family, and he just he wished football had been like that his whole life. They just turned him loose.
Yeah,
gave him free reign to do what he wanted, and he bled silver and black, and that's why Al loved him. So did Tom Flores.
And I know you had the fortune to be around Al Davis too, as sort of an intermediary, right, between him and Lyle at times, and because you were around together so much. What did Al Davis say to you about Lyle, and kind of what was that relationship like between owner and player?
Oh, it was like father and son. Al loved him. I mean, they grew up in the same neighborhood. He knew how tough Lyle was, and he just he loved him. He would do anything for Lyle, and Lyle would do anything for Al Davis. I mean, Mr. Davis was a great guy. I know you hear some stories from some people who don't like him, but 99.9% of all the players who ever played for him loved him, and he would do anything for his players. And if you were one of his favorites, there wasn't a thing he wouldn't do for you. And Lyle was his favorite player of all time.
Well, and you have that period of time. So Lyle retires, and then at the request of Mr. Davis, Lyle attempts his comeback, which of course didn't end well. It didn't end as everybody wanted it to, with Lyle back on the field. But was that primarily because Al asked him to come back? Is that why, or was it a little bit of Lyle missing the game as well?
Well, Lyle used to get so frustrated when he saw his team, his family out there on the field. And when he would see a player put his hand down to help somebody up, it just made him so mad. He goes, "You don't do that. You step on their hand." And he just said, he goes, "They're not like we were." It frustrated the heck out of him, which it frustrated the heck out of Mr. Davis. And when he asked him to come back, Lyle jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, and
he's going to change the Raiders back to who they were.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about it too, because obviously physically it was a different situation for Lyle, but the fact that Davis knew what he had with Lyle Alzado, he understood, and like you said, and I've seen actually video, and some of the video that you do in your for your book trailer as well, you see some of that with Lyle on the sideline. And you can see him gritting his teeth and just like, what are you doing? And he wanted to be out there. But he also, to your point, the game started to change. It started to get a little more friendly for whatever reason as the next generation stepped up. But clearly he missed the game. He was obviously doing so much more too. He was doing acting. television. He was doing movies. And as he made that shift from football to retirement, what was it like for you guys? In talking with him, did he miss the game so much that he had to be around it a lot, or had he gotten to a place where he still loved the game, but he was okay doing everything else?
He was okay doing everything else. I mean, he missed it. We went to the games. We watched games on TV, and we trained every single morning. And it just, Lyle, he loved the game. I mean, it's what made him, and he missed it, yes. And when he got the opportunity to go back, he would go back now. If he was alive today and they asked him to come back, he would. And actually, the way they're playing nowadays, he'd probably do a good job on the field too.
Yeah, he would. I'm sure. Some. I mean, remember they changed a rule because of Lyle, right? The whole helmet thing with that infamous play that we see over and over again. But that intensity is something that is one of the things that made him such a great player. But when you look at Lyle, by the way, I have to ask you this question because since the last time we talked, I'm watching NFL Network and this thing pops up and it's Lyle when he fought Muhammad Ali at Mile High Stadium. Did he ever talk to you about that and that experience?
Yeah, he did. Because Lyle was a boxer when he grew up.
Yeah.
He was a New York State champion, and he always liked boxing and he liked fighting, and he actually introduced me to Muhammad Ali in a green room after a show. And Ali put his fists up, and he's going, "No, champ, no. My jaw still hurts from when we fought."
Well, and the amazing thing was, well, Jim, though, the amazing thing, though, was with that fight, Muhammad Ali kind of went in as an exhibition, and Lyle, being the competitive guy that he was, he went into it full bore, and then he stung the champ. He stung Muhammad Ali a couple times, and that's when Ali got a little serious and then started to punish back. But Lyle looked good. I mean, I watched the whole fight because then I looked it back up on YouTube, and Lyle looked really good. And it was funny because it just looked like Muhammad Ali wasn't taking it as seriously. But then as soon as he realized that Lyle had skill in the ring, then he got serious.
Right. Yeah, it opened a lot of people's eyes. I mean, it scared the Broncos enough to trade him.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely. And that's what he was trying to do, right? He was in that contract impasse. So he said, I'm going to go out and do this.
Back in those days, you were in a contract and you were stuck in the contract no matter what you did, and Lyle wanted out of it. And he said, okay. He goes, if you're not going to renegotiate my contract, I'm going to go become a professional fighter. And they didn't take him serious until he stepped in the ring. And they took him serious and they traded him.
Yeah, that's incredible. What a story. And that's the thing. I mean, I think for a lot of our younger listeners, Jim, who might not have been around when Lyle was alive or when Lyle was playing, and a personality too, because he was a cultural personality too because of Hollywood and what he was doing there. It really is a fascinating story, and his personalities. Of course, I think most people have seen some of the NFL film stuff because he tends to be in most of the Raider NFL films if they do any kind of historical perspective, because he even as a football player, when he was being interviewed, even though he was serious, he was dead serious, he knew also how to play to the camera immediately, which is why he made the jump to acting so easily. But for Lyle, too, Jim, as a good friend of his, and again, we're talking to Jim Duffner, who is the author of the Lyle Alzado story, Nobody's Invincible. You can pick it up and click on the links below and pick it up on Amazon. I highly recommend it. We're all quarantined to our homes at this point. Read up on your Raider history. And this book, Jim, that's where I want to spend a little time now, is the reason you wrote this book. Because most of the time when you read a book about a figure like a Lyle Alzado or a John Matuzak or anybody like that, you get the sensationalized, I'm going to make a buck off somebody that I used to run around with or that I was friends with. Your book is not that way. Your book is highly respectable from a perspective. It is an open book, meaning that you talk about the good, the bad, but you do it with reverence and respect because he was your friend. Talk to me a little bit about kind of why you decided in the first place to write the book and how long it took you to get there and on that journey.
It took quite a while. I mean, Lyle wanted me to write the book. He asked me to write it if he wasn't around to write it with me. made me promise him that, I would, which I did. And he passed away, and his wife at the time, Kathy, said that she had a book deal in the works and she had a film she was going to do. And so I just kind of put the book on the shelf and forgot about it. And then it just started playing on my mind a few years ago. And it just, I ended up writing it. And I just got a phone call from Cindy, Lyle's ex-wife, and she thanked me for writing the book. She said Lyle would have been real proud of it.
Oh, that's
and
special.
You told the truth throughout. She said you told the truth throughout the whole book. She goes, it's amazing. She loved it and kept thanking me. And then his son, Justin, thanked me for writing the book and thanked me for being such a good friend to his dad. That meant the world to me. And he said his dad would have been real proud of the book.
That's great, because that, to me, I mean, that, like I said, the book has 5-star reviews on Amazon, and everyone who's read it that we've talked to or we've seen in social media praises the book, talks about how they can't put it down. But at the same time, that's, I think those 2 reviews right there, Jim, the 2 people closest to him, his ex-wife, of course, and his son, that's remarkable. And I think that's what I'm trying to tell people with your book when I do tell people to read it as well, is the fact that it is done with such care and respect, but not hiding the truth. I mean, like us all, we have positives, we have negatives, we have demons that we all fight. And Lyle had his too, but you lay them out in such a way, including your own. So I think that that's something that sets this book apart. And I hope somebody does approach you about maybe turning it into a film, because I think it's a great friendship story, but it's also a great story about a man in his life and what he went through and how you guys did that together. And you watching it was really fascinating. So you get through this book and you write it, and you're going back and you're remembering all these stories. So it gives you time to kind of reflect on your friendship with him. Not only that, but also Lyle as a human being. When you look at that and you put the book together, and I'm sure at times it was tough to write, but when you put it together, what is the underlying story that people are going to take away, do you think, from your experience of being so close to really, what was a brother in Lyle Alzado when they read this book?
Well, I hope that, like Lyle he wanted to open people's eyes to, a few different things, and he wanted to help people. And I think this book will open a lot of people's eyes and help a lot of people, and it made me feel so good when Justin and Cindy got a hold of me and told me that. It made the whole thing worthwhile.
No doubt. And that's the thing with Lyle Alzado. Everybody knows the mean side, and of course the end of his life, the admission of using steroids, and he did it so publicly. Of course, the Sports Illustrated cover, and then you had a lot of people turn on him. A lot of people called him a liar because he had gone on the Tonight Show and these other shows and said, "No, I don't do steroids." And then he came on Roy Firestone, I think it was, and he admitted it, and he was open about it, and that cut people the wrong way too. You had people who were still involved in professional sports, be it football or weightlifting, could be any number of sports, who were not happy that he was outing the issue of performance enhancing drugs and what he had done and what others were doing. How difficult was that for him when he finally got to the point where, okay, I'm going to lay it out there so I can help people and hopefully help people avoid what happened to me, and then he got pushback?
Well, it killed him. Like, there was one show he was going to go on, the Sally Jesse Raphael show. He was going to go on there, and I had Spike Williams called me, and she goes, she's a bodybuilder, stunt woman, actress. You may know her from like Star Trek or some other shows, but she called me and said, "Hey, don't let Lyle go on the show. They've hired a bunch of bodybuilders to sit in the stands and to call him a liar and to egg him on to tear him down."
Oh, man.
And I told Lyle, and he canceled, and he just couldn't believe why they would do that. And it was all over ratings. I told him, I go, it's just to build the ratings. They don't care about you. They don't care about helping people. And he, that kind of crushed him. I mean, he wanted to be in the Hall of Fame so bad, and that's all he cared about was that and his reputation. But at the end, he didn't care about anything except helping kids and helping people and helping them not to make the same mistakes that he did.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
You know,
Well, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to ask you about that too, because the times have changed so significantly from even then, where you had admission like that, and the way Lyle Alzado was treated after he came out and said, "Yeah, I've been lying all these years, but now I'm telling you the truth because I want to help people." Because today, you have people do things much worse. Or do things similar where they violate rules or laws, and they come out, they ask for forgiveness, they kind of do the tour, they do all the talk shows, and then suddenly and people just look the other way and say, okay, yeah, we forgive you. Back then, though, it was so shocking and so different of a time. You had, the media has changed. Now you have social media. You can control your own message. You can do all these things that you couldn't do back then. But is there any doubt in your mind that even though he paid the price personally, and with his reputation clearly not being in the Hall of Fame still, that what he did and when he did it and how he did it changed the way things happened after him?
Oh, it made a difference. There were a lot of kids that wrote him letters, and he got a lot of different messages thanking him and telling him that, because of you, I'm not getting on steroids, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to make, the same mistakes. I mean, he accepted the Lord at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more important to him to go to heaven and to, open up people's eyes towards the Lord and stay away from the steroids.
Yeah, and
just to, try to help people to be better people.
Yeah, and that's what's important. I think that's what gets lost, because the end of his life and his activity at that point, it's not as well documented. I mean, there are the interviews and things like that, but in your book, you talk so much about what he was up to and what he was talking about, and really how he realized the error of his ways before, and he wanted to, with whatever time he had left, to really have an impact on people so that they did not make that same mistake. And I think that's another reason why people should read your book, is because that message from Lyle needs to be told again, because it's still applicable today. It doesn't matter whether it's performance enhancing drugs in sports, or if it's, personal addiction, whatever it may be. His message was so important. Do you think towards the end that he felt as though, did he realize the impact he was having, or was it not yet maybe there yet for him?
He was fighting for his life, and he was trying to make a difference, and he had a lot of changes. He was moved up to Oregon and, away from a lot of his friends, and I kept in contact with him constantly at the end. And for a minute, he thought he was going to beat it, because it went away. He had 2 more stages to go through of treatments, but it went away. So the new doctors he had up in Oregon just, said, we don't need to give him any more. Let's just stop it here. They did, and it came back. It came back within, I don't know how many weeks. He woke up one morning and he couldn't swallow. And then he just sort of gave up.
Yeah.
I remember calling up there, and Ed answered the phone and said, Lyle, he's given up. He's in bed, and he doesn't want to get out of bed, doesn't want to talk to anybody, doesn't want to see anybody, but he'll talk to you. See if you can motivate him, because I was going up there 2 days later. I was waiting for Joey Rourke was coming back to town, and then we were going to fly up. We already had our tickets to go visit Lyle, and when they put Lyle on the phone, he had a trach in his throat at the time they had to put in, and I could hear him breathing, but he just wanted to hear me talk to him. So I talked to him for a while, and just, I told him I loved him and that I was going to see him in a couple of days. And when I got up there, he was gone. They said it was like he wanted to see you again, but he was afraid to have you see him. And I was the only one allowed to see him in his casket.
Wow.
Lyle wrote a note saying that, that if I wanted to see him or had to, I could, but he didn't want anybody else to.
Amazing.
He was just, he was like a big brother to me, my best friend.
Yeah.
And I miss him.
Yeah, that's the thing. The thing with loss and losing someone as close. Again, we're talking to Jim Duffner, who's the author of the Lyle Alzado story, Nobody's Invincible, which you can link to below here on Amazon.com. Great book. I recommend you buy it. You lose someone like that, Jim, that you went through so many important periods in your own life. And knowing him and knowing what he went, you guys were there for one another, and those stories are captured so vividly in the book. But the loss never goes away, does it? Especially with somebody like that, like you said, a big brother to you, and such a large personality too. That's not somebody you forget ever. But if you look back at that relationship and the time you spent with Lyle, what's the one thing about him that you want people to remember most?
There's so many things about him. I mean, he was so kind and so caring, but everything was black and white with him. There was no gray area. It was right or it was wrong. And you didn't want to cross that line. But I don't know. He was bigger than life.
Yeah.
And, and he loved people. He loved kids. He loved he wanted to help anybody he could help. Yet he was such, giving heart, but such a tough guy.
Yeah, and you so nicely, despite the struggles of growing up, the story of Lyle Alzado and the relationship with his father and his family's unit and how that was so dysfunctional and how that kind of led to so much, it really helped me understand so much about him that I could have never known, because nobody's told that story. You're the first one to really tell that story, and I appreciate you doing that because it really matters, I think, for people to do that. You need to understand the totality of the person as well. And we know a lot as Raider fans listen to this. They know a lot about the old tough Raider guys and the guys who are known for being what do you want to call it, dirty or whatever on the field and mean and gruff. But at the same time, he was a really caring person who wanted, I think, what everybody wanted in life, Lyle, and that's, as you said, Jim, excuse me, Lyle wanted to be loved, right? I mean, it was he just wanted that acceptance and to know that someone else out there cared for him.
Yeah, that's what he was looking for his whole life. Yeah, and he just, I keep. It's hard for me to imagine him as old as he'd be right now. I just, I don't know, it's mind-boggling because I've got it edged in my head how he used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw him I used to hold him up for x-rays and stuff when he was sick, and he didn't have the strength to hold himself up. Just because I always treated him like the man that he was. Mm-hmm. The tough guy, and I never babied him or anything, and he knew and he appreciated it, and he I don't know, I just I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. But the good thing about it, Jim, is you've captured it so well in the book, right? All of these memories and things like that. Before I let you go, though, we got to tell one story, because one of the other, for whatever reason, Lyle and John Matuzak seem to be, especially even with younger fans, seem to be the two guys who people gravitate towards. Maybe, and it's not an accident. They both were in Hollywood. They both had a career there as well as football. But you have a great Matuzak story that you've told us, and I want you to tell it again because there was one guy that nobody would ever mess with. So tell that story. I mean, going on the bus first of all, and then talk about the Matuzak story.
Yeah, well, Lyle was the one player everybody was truly afraid of. Matuzak, it was more hype in the media and stuff, and the players would still, give him crap if he was late to get on the bus, or if he did something wrong, they'd leave him. Where Lyle, nobody said a word if he was late to get on the bus because they were truly scared to death of him, of crossing him. And he, one time at a party, down by the beach at a Mexican restaurant, an old hangout for, the Raiders.
Ponchos.
The original one. Ponchos, yes.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I've got a couple Mexican restaurants in L.A. on my mind right now. But I've been kind of dying to go there and have some good Mexican food as soon as this virus disappears. But
yes.
Anyway, it was a watering hole where everybody used to hang out, and we were having a party, and Matusak started picking fights with players, with fans. And then when he crossed the line and started to pick the fights with players, Lyle grabbed him and threw him down the stairs out front. Just stood there and stared at him, and John was smart enough not to come back in the bar because he knew that Lyle would kill him.
Oh, my gosh. That's incredible. What a story.
Lyle was a real deal.
Yeah.
And players were scared to death of him.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, that's why again, you got to pick up the book, the Lyle Alzado story, Nobody's Invincible by James Duffner. You can find it on Amazon. We linked it below here, because in that book too, you talk about Lyle's growing up too, and the Italian gentleman, I'll put it that way, that he worked for, and what he had to do on the streets to survive. It's really remarkable. So in the true sense of the word, even though we know through you and your stories, and of course his family and friends, that the side of Lyle Alzado, the man, the human being, away from everyone else, was a very caring and really individual who wanted to see people do good things and himself do good things to help the world. But he was the true tough guy. I mean, this is not a guy that I don't care if Lyle had been a truck driver his whole life. This is not a guy you would have messed with.
No, he was the real deal, and he wasn't hesitant to tell you either. It's kind of, you just didn't want to cross the line with him.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it's great to be able to remember Lyle through the eyes and ears of his good friend Jim Duffner, because Jim, as we move past April 3rd, which would have been his 71st birthday, I still think if he was around, he would be like one of those guys like Jack LaLanne, man, where he would be in ultra shape. I think he would have probably continued acting. Do you think he would have been still active in Hollywood even at his age?
I think he would have been, and I think most importantly, he probably would have picked up a job with the Raiders.
Good point.
I'm sure he would have gotten into coaching or something with them.
Yeah, he was. He was that's the thing that, and you know very well too, because you now live here in Southern Nevada. Las Vegas and the Raiders now coming here. The Raider alumni group is so strong, and owner Mark Davis has that weekend where they all get together up in Northern California at training camp. And I can't imagine Lyle Alzado as a team ambassador in Las Vegas, with his good buddy Jim Duffner by his side. I could only imagine what kind of new and less threatening trouble you may have gotten in.
It would have been a lot of fun.
But
it really would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would have been. But thank goodness we have you here, and to remember him in such a great and respectful and really endearing way in the book. The Lyle Alzado story, Nobody's Invincible. So make sure you pick that up. And Jim, as always, you're always welcome. And I know we'll be in touch with you more, and we'll see you and hopefully catch a Raider game with you at some point.
That sounds good to me. Thanks, Scott.
Not a problem. Again, that's Jim Duffner. You can find his book, The Lyle Alzado Story, Nobody's Invincible, on Amazon.com. That's all linked in our properties below, but you can also go search it. Make sure you buy it, and then hit up Jim on his Facebook page. You can go find his Facebook page for the book. There you can communicate with him and maybe even get him to sign a book. But make sure you pick up the book. You will not put it down. It's also a great opportunity to buy a gift for somebody who's stuck at home for who knows how long during this coronavirus stuff. So make sure you do that. Jim, thanks again for joining us, man, and best of luck to you, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
All right, take care, Jim. Well, that's going to do it for this special podcast remembering Lyle Alzado on what would have been his 71st birthday. Again, thanks to Jim Duffner. Hope you enjoyed listening to that. And again, pick up the book. The links are below. You will not be sorry. Really enjoyable, and done so with such great respect and reverence for a Raiders great, number 77, Mr. Lyle, 3 Mile Lyle Alzado. So enjoy that. By the way, Sunday, tomorrow morning, we'll be back with Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Our guest, Spiro Ditas, of course, the NFL announcer on CBS. He's going to talk about the NFL under COVID-19. He'll also give us his thoughts on the Raiders. We'll also be joined by Scott Bair, longtime Raiders reporter with NBC Sportsnet up in the Bay Area, and Evan Grote from Just Pod Baby, now a member of the Silver and Black Today media group. He'll be with us too to give us his take on Raiders free agency. And WG Ramirez, as I know him, Willie, he'll be on to talk about how your favorite sports writers, that's right, might be struggling during COVID-19 with the fact that many of them are freelance writers. That's right. So we're going to hear from him on what's being done there and what they're up to. Again, that's Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. 8 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can hear it on the radio.com app. It's a free app on Android and iOS. You can also watch us, usually full live video, on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. This time it will be audio only with visual because of our remote broadcasting capabilities. We cannot do all of us on video at the same time, so we're going to do this for you, but you can still catch it there and take part. The YouTube chat is always lit. Make sure you're on there. For everybody here at Silver and Black Today, thanks again to Jim Duffner. And here we go. We'll sail into the sunset as we remember Lyle Alzado. You guys take care.